I think we should have a round of applause for Howard and Joan. This is the final reading in a year-long series, and it's a lot of work and a lot of pleasure for auditors and readers alike. And this is a series that's continuing into next year. So a round of applause. Well, what a variety, and I'm trying to think where my poems will fit in. I guess I won't even think about it. I'll just let them sail your way. I did want to start with a couple of poems that are not my own. I have a Chinese poem as well, Scott. That's interesting. Simply to be a kind of keynote for the poems that follow my own. One poem is by Whitman. I started a reading for Oregon Wild with a Whitman quotation that was very much an outside type of thing. Whitman is extremely diverse, wonderful poet I'm finding as I continue to read and zip through the things I don't care about. No need to bog down. And this is the poem I want to read. The title is the first line. And I'm going to try to read each line on one breath. One of the things that characterizes this poem is the length of the line, and yet that's the structural part of it. So if I look like Adam Harris at Jazz Station, who's a great tenor saxophonist, puffing up to get a line, forgive me, it's a short poem, and I'll probably pass out after. I heard you, solemn, sweet pipes of the organ, as last Sunday morn I passed the church. Winds of autumn, as I walked the woods at dusk, I heard your long stretched sighs up above so mournful. I heard the perfect Italian tenor singing at the opera. I heard the soprano in the midst of the quartet singing. Heart of my love, you too I heard murmuring low through one of the wrists around my head. Heard the pulse of you when all was ringing little bells last night under my ear. I value this poem for its intimacy, and I hope to continue with that particular chord through my readings. Here's a Chinese poem, Po Chui, written 1,000 years before the Whitman poem, about 900. It's called The North Window, Bamboo and Rock, and that may not be the title. This may be provided by David Hinton, a marvelous translator of Chinese work. And here the structure is the couplets, the two-line pieces, at least in the way Chinese, which looks very different from English, is put into English here. So I'll try to respect that structure as I read. The North Window, Bamboo and Rock. A magisterial rock, windswept and pure, and a few bamboo so lavish and green. Facing me, they seem full of sincerity. I gaze into them and can't get enough. And there's more at the north window and along the path beside West Pond. Wind sowing bamboo clarities aplenty, rain gracing the subtle greens of moss. My wife's still here, frail and old as me, but no one else. The children are gone. Leave the window open. If you close it, who'll keep us company for the night? Pretty plain language following Elliot and even Scott and certainly Joanna. We've had a plenitude of very rich, different approaches to language. There was a school of writing in Chinese called the bland and the even. The bland and the even. And I kind of like that, and I participate in that. So if my poems seem a little underinflated, it's deliberate. It's not a failing. The house in which we imagine dying will be sold. We will move into the city, into deep old age, carrying only what we love and use. I wash the kitchen floor, bright linoleum that shows the dirt, mud time, dusk of the year, on my knees with bucket and sponge. We have lived here 30 years, longer than in any other place, mixing good seasons with bad, more bent, more human. I wash away our dog's footprints. The floor shines with light. No one knows where or when or how. A pillow someplace, a clean floor. I hate to think I've grown narrow and selfish. No more trumpet of activism, too many wearisome causes. The pale and bitter tea of ancient poets satisfies me. There is no group to which I must add my name. My wife heats soup. I fill a growler at the tavern downstairs. Steam rises as we stir our bowls, waiting for what the other has to say. This one's a little more elaborate, but I really like the Chinese in translation. It's such a simplification of motive and language, and such a lowering of the entry point. Boom, into the poem. Boom, out of the poem. Looking out the window, talking about bamboo and a rock. You know, leave the door open, leave the window open. You know, we're in here by ourselves. Bing, you know, bye-bye. You know, it's pretty amazing, really. So this is a little more elaborate. This is called a late love poem. It's for Anne. She's read to me many dozens of long books, and this one was Let Us Now Praise Famous Men by James Agee, and that's the epigraph, and it's about simply listening while Anne reads a particular passage which the epigraph refers to. So the epigraph itself is beautiful, and probably I should end the reading at that point. The leisure of rabbits, land tortoises with their curious smells. The cow stands in the shade, working her jaws and suspending upon creation the wide, amber, holy lamp of her consciousness. As you read to me the grand catalog from James Agee, all animals and plants of one place in Alabama, I rest my head in your lap, in the warm basket of a body that remains unknown well beyond the time either of us can create a child. My head sinks, heavy with the creature's aging names. Dusk fills the trees, closes around sharecropper houses and fields. It becomes full dark, warm still with sun. Within the hollow of your hips, I rest my thought. A cobble in the path, an egg in the nest. This is a completely made-up poem, but I imagined a church storefront in Springfield on one of those side streets. I'm sure there are a couple, and I was remembering sort of one, but everything in this is total fiction. There's a lot of fiction in poetry. I remember saying that to Joan Dobie in workshop, and she just got really pissed at me. Because, doesn't mean it's untrue, but it doesn't mean that I'm just taking a decal, off my body and saying, there it is. Storefront church. The display window on this back street presents a heart in a hand, in the palm of a hand, balanced and full as a softball. The church of the heart and hand, a heart's rest in a sure hand. If the heart fell because the hand tilted from inattention, It would roll to another place on the wide and otherwise empty shelf. Or it might roll back onto the floor, where it would lie in the dark, bruised perhaps. I commit to this mystery. It is her heart, my hand. I have been assigned the task of balancing it in the window, where she will stop to look and ponder. What church is this I've never passed before on a side street of my city, with a hand and a heart arranged simply, offered for inspection and wonder, the window otherwise empty and poorly lit at night. May Day is a flower day in some traditions, getting a basket together or putting a flower on somebody's stoop, something like that. And I wrote this poem for Anne this May. And I was thinking of William Carlos Williams. Some of the poems, here's my elbow, they kind of stick out awkwardly. His lineation and even his syntax, kind of deliberately awkward. Maybe as an antidote to the sentimentality of the poem, to make the language a little weird, a little wired. And that's what I did here. Very short and strange little poem. May 1st for Anne, who brought herself as if upon a stem. Imagine a world without flowers. No matter how I try, I cannot. Herself as if upon a stem, blossoming in my sight. Some of these poems seem to fit the Memorial Day theme, and I'll read them. How's my time doing? Am I okay?
You have a lot of time.
Okay. Sometimes it seems in reading that you stand here forever. Short readings are the best. And what wonderful company, and what a great turnout. And I've loved this series. I haven't come to every one, but they've been attended well. They've been well publicized, and very unpredictable in who will be in the program, and I like that. Here's a poem called Riddling, and the poem explains pretty much what riddling is. It's an agricultural process when you take compost material and rub it across a screen so that it falls through. The soil does, and all the stuff that you want to throw back onto the compost pile can be thrown for the next year. So this is called riddling, something I really like doing. And when we move to town, I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with my riddling impulse. I breathe my mother's lilac as I fork compost from a pile to the wood-framed screen, the riddle set on a wheelbarrow. Gloved hands break lumps, scrape the mixture back and forth. Twigs and pebbles caught, the loose, light soil sifting through. Under my mother's lilac, just come into bloom. I'm making soil, I like to say, though soil makes itself. Hers, because her ashes lie here, below the riddle, screening compost, below my shoveling hands, below the heavy scent of her white lilac blossoms. Bleeding hearts. Their name alone requires a corner of the yard, a bank of flowers from which I pulled the nursery variety, too tall and showy, not what you find now in the forest, blooming along the trail, catching spring rain seep. What about a name? Flowers possess names that start me thinking, mumbling. Heel all, candy tuft, lady slipper. Here are hearts, down hanging, bruised pink, almost drained. That's what I see in them as I bring my heart down to these blooms without scent, under the wind, drawn inward, it seems. You read the news, you talk with friends. There are whole banks of sorrow and regret. No need to make a noise about it. No need to unbow your head. This also has bleeding hearts in it, but it has a tremendous leap very soon into what is a short poem. It moves from looking out the window where we live to thinking about bucking a log with a two-person saw out in the woods. I did some of that to clear trails. And so there's a jump to that, and just so you're with me. And there's a word, kerf, which was at the last reading I was at. I brought up kerf there too. Right. Why does a saw jump out of a kerf? It was my riddle. Kerf is nothing more than the cut that the saw is made. And of course, if you've done any kind of hand sawing, sometimes it's hard to get started, to get a kerf. A perfect time to be a poet. That's the title of this. At ease in my chair, in my lap, a book, dozing like an old cat. I gaze at bleeding hearts banked outside the window. I remember the tricky part of starting to buck a log. The saw wants to jump and sidestep. Once the curve sets deep enough, the back and forth smooths out, the steel obedient. What lies at the core, the stained heartwood, gets cut and cut until exposed. And this is my last poem. We were just walking, Joanna and Ann and I, along the river before the reading, and the cottonwoods are beautiful, but the moment that I try to capture in this poem has gone by, which is the moment of the cottonwood aroma. It'll come back in the fall or later in the summer, but it comes from the sap. And I'm surprised there isn't a men's line of cologne, underarm deodorant, all that stuff that isn't called cottonwood.
Yeah.
I had an idea once of designing a whole line of clothing for Vermont Sala. And if you know Vermont Sala, that's a big joke too. But if you like the idea of a cottonwood line of aromatics, run with it. This is a serious poem. First line's the title. My dead of such reserve, nothing ventured, nothing said. They occupy some distant state where bus and train service must be bad. I look for them in clouds. I listen in traffic. They seem closest in cottonwoods when buds slit their sheaths. I hold one, aromatic, sticky between my fingers. Grandfather's shaving cream. Grandmother's linen closet. My dead of such reserve teach me this. We have little to say to those we love. We seldom approach. Yet come down to the river in spring. Something sweet fills the air. You'll want to feel it on your skin. Thank you.